Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners. Just want to give you a little information about the mission of the Newsa-Cast. Our mission stems from the mission of the Red Smith Banquet, and that mission was to support youth sports in the Fox Valley. Over the 57 years of its existence, we've been honored to give out over $1 million to various youth sports organizations throughout the Fox Valley. The Newsa-Cast is looking to continue that mission and support youth sports as well. You can help us do that by donating to the Newsa-Cast and the Red Smith Sports Banquet.
On today's Newsa-Cast, we start a two-part series on the safety and football. And we have got a great interview. Tosh and I sit down with Clint Brightman from Xenith, and we start with a helmet. We take an old look at new, which is presented by Raleigh Winter & Associates. The Red Smith Banquet Throwback brings us to 1994 when we had Packer President Bob Harlan. And we end this podcast like we always do with a little It's Forgotten and I'm Never Forgetting. So what do you say, folks? Let's get this show on the road.
These people don't understand if they hadn't changed the rules and if they hadn't gone to the extremes and the measures that we've gone through, football wouldn't be around.
Welcome to the Newsa-Cast. What is a Newsa-Cast? It's where we bring local folk stories to life through conversation.
All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, welcome to another episode of the Newsa-Cast. This is kind of an interesting one because, Joel, we are literally doing almost like a two-part series this week and next week, right?
Yeah, a little, right? Mini-series, safety and football, Tosh. I don't know what we're going to call it, but yeah, you're right. We're taking a look at, we all know football was under attack for safety, and we're taking a look, an in-depth look at helmets this week, and next week we're going to look at the Cato collar, which fits on top of the shoulder pads, helps with concussions. So yeah, Tosh, we're doing our part to shed some light on the safety in football and the advances that's made in equipment. We talk with Clint Brightman. He's with Xenith football helmets, and it's way more than just helmets. It's a lot of helmets talk, but there's shoulder pads. There's just philosophy advancement. Just it's the evolution, right, Tosh? We talked evolution.
Yeah. We talked about the evolution of football from the days of wearing basically leather helmets all the way up to now. I mean, when you're talking about a helmet in the National Football League with titanium masks and, you know, being $2,000, $3,000, we love the game. People love watching the game. It's worldwide now, and we have to do something to make sure we're keeping the players safe, so that they have long lives after football as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I, Tosh, our favorite players that we grew up with, the Earl Campbells, one, a lot of them have passed away. But two, the ones that are living can't, because they can hardly walk. They can't get out of bed. They're just crippled, and you feel so bad for them. I mean, Earl Campbell, there's nobody in the world. A Mack truck couldn't take down Earl Campbell, and the guy can't even walk 10 feet anymore. And that guy had bigger thighs than anybody on earth.
Yeah, so exactly, that's the truth. I mean, we see these players who did feel like they could do anything, and later in their lives they're not able to. And we're not even talking about concussions here. We're talking about just the physical wear and tear on the body itself. But concussions are a huge piece, and that's why football was so under attack. And I think that we're going to talk about it in this episode with Clint, not only the advancements in technology, but the advancements in the game itself and rules changes and things like that. So yeah, it's an excellent episode. If you have any interest, in the safety piece, this is fantastic. You guys are going to geek out on it for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. We love to geek out. And for any of you new listeners, yeah, we definitely like to geek out, and Clint likes to geek out. So there's a lot of geek talk. But we, as the Newsa-Cast, we've been around for about a year now. So we have a lot of, actually, Tosh, we have a ton of really, really cool episodes, a lot of really interesting people that live in the Fox cities, that live in Wisconsin, that you and I just sit down and literally just shoot the breeze with them, spitball, whatever you want to call it. And have just great conversations and learn about people that literally live right next door.
Yeah. And I just want to bring up one for sure that with the Olympics starting on July 26th, Maddie Wanamaker from Neenah is going to be on the eight person crew boat for the Olympics for the United States. They have an excellent shot. I think they finished third in Worlds just a couple months ago. They have an excellent shot at a medal, and it's going to be, exciting to cheer somebody on from Northeast Wisconsin. So go back and listen to that episode along with all of them. They're really, really good. And Maddie was an exceptional one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. That's where we release them. But that Maddie one, you're right, Tosh. She's really active on social media. So is the Newsa-Cast. So follow Newsa-Cast, all our socials, right? Cheap plug there. But Maddie posted a photo on. They're headed to Paris. They're on their way now and going to train for a couple of weeks. And before you know it, Tosh, the Olympics are going to be here. And you're right. We get to cheer a hometown girl on. Come on now, right?
Yeah,
it's all about rowing.
Absolutely. It's going to be a blast. So, looking forward to the Olympics. We have a lot of, I can't remember how many athletes from Wisconsin, like 17, 20 athletes from Wisconsin on either the Paralympic or the Olympic team. So that's really cool to see that. And definitely, check those things out. The Olympics are always fun to watch. I can think back to all the way into the 80s and the 70s watching the Olympics. So it's been fantastic.
Tosh, speaking of the Olympics, just popped in my head. Obviously, for you new listeners, that this Newsa-Cast started out of the Red Smith Banquet. 57 years that banquet was around. It was a sports banquet, but one of our last ones we had Bob Costas there. And
right.
You and I spent the afternoon with him, but I mean, are there Olympics without Bob Costas? I'm not sure if I know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Bob was here and he talked. He had some great stories about it. I don't believe we released that in throwback form yet. I think we'll get that out at some point. But it triggered a great memory, and he's one of the all-time greats for sure. And Mike Tirico does a great job too. He's starting to, he fills that seat pretty nicely.
Yeah, you're not going to get anything that's more fun to watch with all the excitement for competing for your country than the Olympics. I mean, it's just something special about it for sure.
Tosh, you know what else is going to be special? 287 days, Tosh. 287 days. The NFL draft is going to be in Green Bay. I heard this story because now you've got me hyper focused on this. They definitely have the countdown clock every day. You know how many days are left before the draft. But now they do stories did you know that the campgrounds, you're going to be able to bring an RV now, and they're going to open 3 of the Brown County parks early for RV parking, Tosh, RV camping.
All right.
So giddy up. And I'm not wishing this at all. I mean, this is so huge for the area, but what happens if we get a blizzard, like 18 inches of snow that weekend?
Well, yeah. See, Joe, this is on you. I just said I didn't like the countdown clock. Now you're bringing up snowstorms and whatever else. That's bad juju.
I'm just a curious guy, Tosh. I like to ask questions. And so,
question for you, Joe. How was your weekend? And anything exciting happen?
It was 2 things, Tosh. It was good. It weirdly, since this is mostly a football episode, this is my first year in maybe 15 years, I think, 14 or 15 years that I'm not going to be officiating football. Been with John Doden's football crew for a lot of years. And it's weird this time of year. This is for any football official out there. This is the time they geek out on rules. I mean, this is you're basically cramming for the rule book. You're taking tests. You're getting ready for the season. That's how an official or any good official starts getting ready for the season. Or some would say they study the rules year round, Tosh, but me, I definitely studied in July. But I kind of just felt that in the air. So it's the first time I don't miss rules. I hated the rules, but I kind of missed that feeling. But the fun thing that I did, Tosh, I went down and we actually made the Noosa Minute is made of this experience, but I went down to a local establishment called Misfits, and I saw a girl's name is Amelia Ford, and she was mind blowing. She was awesome. She's won a lot of like Wisconsin awards. She's played Milo Music a couple of years. Really, really, there weren't a whole lot of people there, but holy cow, was she good?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
She I think she's won a couple Whammies, the Wisconsin area music industry. Yep. So yeah, she's fantastic. So that's awesome. Good bar, good place to go hang out.
Yeah, it was. That was a really fun night. Good to catch her, and I admire her social presence. I'm always kind of hyper focused on what other like artists and athletes and all that do for that, because it's become our life and the way most people communicate. And this old guy's got to learn how that works.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's
How
awesome.
about you, Tosh? How about anything exciting over the last week? Have a good 4th?
We had a good 4th. We spent some time with family on Lake Winnebago, and that was good.
Nice.
Sunday, though, we haven't given a shout out for a while, so I need to shout out Cocoon Brewery in De Pere, actually Ledgestone, De Pere, the De Pere area. It's a great little brewery. They have what they call cocoons, which are little outbuildings that you can rent, and they deliver beer and food out to them. There was a band playing. It was an awesome Sunday.
So what's a cocoon made out of? Like what? Like a wood structure? Or
it's a wood structure, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So you sit there with a table? Yeah.
They have a table. They have TVs. They have couches in them.
And it's semi-private, kind of. I mean,
it is semi-private for sure. Yeah, each one is separate.
Idea.
You want to stand outside by the patio of it. It becomes a little less private, but inside it's totally private. So yeah, it's a really cool brewery, cool idea. Really good beer as well. Great wood-fired pizza.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend getting up to Cocoon Brewery.
And where are they located?
In De Pere. But yeah, we had a good time, and Ethan got a little bit of driving up to De Pere on the back roads. So getting those hours logged for him. So yeah, it was a good Sunday. We had a good time, and they have all kinds of stuff up there. They have bingo some nights and for gift cards and, music and whatever you can imagine. It's a great little brewery, and I highly recommend making the trip up to De Pere to check it out.
No, that sounds good, Tosh. I'm ready to head up there now.
That's good. Yeah, I would recommend it. Like I said, I enjoy it. Have a great time. Bring your own chair. You can sit in the grass and lots of cool views. So I would highly recommend it. So I guess with that, Joe, we should probably get this episode on the road, huh?
Yeah, definitely, Tosh. A little safety in football. We a little segment, an old look at new. But after that, Clint Brightman, Tosh, it's a great one. It's that time again, once again, for an old look at new, brought to you by Raleigh Winter and Associates, celebrating 55 years. Did you know that in 1962, an Appleton junior high school teacher with a strong work ethic started a residential realty company? His name, Raleigh Winter. 3 generations later, the Winters still hold true to a strong work ethic and an excellent reputation in the community. Today, Raleigh Winter and Associates remain actively involved in providing retail, office, and industrial users an affordable, well-designed working environment through the creation and/or acquisition of quality real estate in the Fox cities and even beyond new. So what do you say? Let's take an old look at new.
All right, Newsa-Cast listeners, it is time for the old look at new. That time where we take a little look back into the history books. Joel, what do you got for an old look at new this week?
Well, Tosh, I love history. That's why one of the reasons why we have this segment. And some of my go-to, Facebook pages are like the Appleton Historical Society. And I came across something that I was absolutely stunned that I did not know this, Tosh. But did you know that there were POW camps here during World War II, like at Goodland Field and Hortonville?
Oh, okay. No.
I had no idea. I know this is a football show, and I don't want to bring people down. It's actually When it comes to POW stories, it's actually kind of a good story. It seemed like in all my readings of this, it sounded like they were treated pretty well. They harvested peas out near Hortonville, but there's photos like legit, Tosh, at Goodland Field in the outfield, just a tent city, prisoner of war. And they had at a time 500 prisoners will work in the county plants. I mean, they basically replaced our labor. As they were fighting in the war. And a lot of them too, it was interesting. A lot of them ended up staying here because, I mean, obviously, as you know, I mean, with I'm going to butcher this word, the ethnicity of this area, right, is German. And there's a lot of Germans heritage in this area. So it stemmed some of that from that era. So I was absolutely stunned. And if you want to learn more, go to the Appleton Historical Society. The Fond du Lac Reporter has a really cool article, the Post Crescent, that kind of the history of that. But I don't know about you, Tosh. I was absolutely blown away. I mean, my dad fought in World War II, never knew about this. I worked at Goodland Field when I was 19 or 20, never, ever knew that story. It's unbelievable. Yeah. It blows me away.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How about you, Tosh? What are you taking a look at?
We're going to go back a little further in time, back to 1881. And on July 8th in 1881, the legend has it that a person came into a soda fountain, drugstore soda fountain shop, and they asked the owner, Ed Burns, if he could create or make, instead of what was in the soda, put it on ice cream. Ooh. And Ed Burns out of Two Rivers, Wisconsin, basically came to fame, he's famous, that they say he invented the ice cream sundae on July 8th, 1881.
Dang.
And I think there's a plaque in Two Rivers that says that as well. So, yeah, we're going to look at the soda. So, basically, it was ice cream with whatever they had in the soda fountain, but instead of putting it into the soda fountain, it was put onto the ice cream.
Hell yeah, Ed, right? Creativity, Tosh, back in the 1800s. Oh, that sounds so good. That's an all-time favorite, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, Wisconsin's the home of a lot of things. Ice cream sundae, the hamburger. Hey,
yeah.
Who knows, right?
Who knows, Tosh? Who knows? It's home to everything. It's home to us. I know that.
There you go.
Well, Tosh, that was an old look at new presented by Raleigh Winter and Associates. We thank those guys. And let's keep moving on to the show, Tosh. Safety in football, Tosh. Safety in football.
Actually, some of my best conversations where you come to odd epiphanies happen in situations like this. I was going to be a teacher and a football coach, or wanted to teach and coach. Loved history, loved philosophy, and studied all of that. The irony is my inspiration was Coach Schwanke.
Sure.
I listened to his show and it brought me to tears.
That's awesome.
It's unbelievable. Well, so my son Tyler, I'm kind of repping him. He graduated this year. He's going on to play lacrosse this year, football, and his middle name is Patrick. So there you go.
Yeah.
But that was sort of, I was working at a sporting goods store, and I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. And talk about fate, like God's plan. I can still see it in my mind's eye, right? I think I'm 21 years old. I really don't know what the heck I want to do. And Pat walks by in the mall. I'm working at Schmidt Sporting Goods in the mall, and I dropped out of college because I didn't know quite what I wanted to do. And Pat comes in and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing with your life?" So I'm just working here, playing some softball, flag football. I think we maybe talked about like some aspirations of, man, I'd love to get back into coaching or get into that. And he said, "Why don't you come help us at a football camp?" And that's how it started. So I helped Pat in it was like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade football camp. And he said, "Would you want to stick around and coach our 9th grade guys?" And then from there, it went from that to having some opportunities, helping a little bit in some colleges. In 2010, I went through a divorce, and that's when I kind of said, I got to get back to my family right now. And then coached my son once he started playing some stuff. So, but all that kind of led me back into this, which is sales and sports and equipment and the passion of it. We had a kid. I was coaching wide receivers, and we had a kid who played for us. And man, this is like 1996, 97, 98, somewhere in there, where some of those hits were still kind of violent and sort of encouraged. And he took a helmet to helmet shot, side of the helmet hits the ground. So it's one of those double situations, and he didn't get up. The young man could have gone to Lawrence. So he was smart enough to go to Lawrence, had the grades, and play football there. And it ended all of that. He had issues in the classroom. I've been told maybe it affected some of his social life just because it was such a violent hit. And from then on, I thought, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I was in sales. I wanted to get into something that could help football, protect football. And then it was a matter of where did I want to latch on?
There's so much to unwrap. I mean, you have an incredible story. I didn't want to let this pass, the Pat Schwanke story. I mean, it speaks to, you just never know who's around the next corner, right? Just one little word of encouragement. Just, he was there in that moment and you latched on and it changed your life. And stuff like that is just always amazing to me because you just never know, right?
I mean, not trying to get sideways on this conversation. It makes me emotional. You know, I grew up only child with just a single parent. My dad was really nowhere to be around, but grew up loving sports and didn't really have that guidance, but I always had a ball in my hand. Stayed out of trouble for the most part in high school. And it was because of sports. It was because of guys like Chuck Ross, Pat Schwanke, Dick Fahrenholz. Those are the guys that taught me how to be a dad. I mean, it's the greatest job and the hardest job I've ever had, to be a parent. And I didn't have anyone to see. But when I coached football indirectly, I'm there. All Pat's kids are running around, right? And they're carrying bags for us during practice. And I'm watching how Pat is interacting with his children, Mike and Maggie and the girls. And, now they're beautiful grown, adults and they've got kids. But I look back at it, once in a while, someone will talk about like my parenting style and how inspirational it is. You're such a great dad. And I said, I'm just doing what I think is right. There's no manual, but I was lucky enough to be around guys like Pat and Dick Fahrenholz, who, to me, just did it the right way. I mean, it was awesome.
And you bring that up. I mean, a good coach is beyond a good coach. It's not just the X's and O's in the game. It's about growing as a person. And those guys, they did that. They took people under their wing and they help grow young men.
Yep.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah. Those are guys that got it. There's a lot of teachers and coaches that are just, I saw it firsthand. 3:00 came and they were out the door. And I wanted to teach so badly, but ending up in sales. So I wasn't in the building. That was the hard part for me, was I really had to work hard to build those connections with coaches and with kids because they didn't see me in the halls. But I just sort of followed the lead, guys like Pat and some of our other guys in the coaching staff. The irony was Stacy Seidel. Stacy was a senior my first year, and then a couple of years later came aboard. So he and I had a chance to coach together. And so it's also about family. That's why the game of football, sports are important. It doesn't matter what you play. I'm not here to bash on one or the other and say one's better than the other. I know for a fact, because I've seen it at the AYFA level. I've seen it in high school. I work with customers in the NFL, all levels. And I've seen how important football is to boys and girls, men and women. And I'm glad that Wisconsin has fought to make sure that they can't take it away.
I promise we're going to get to what you actually do, but you're super fascinating. And you bring up a good point, right? Because football is, nobody's going to basically play in the NFL. They're going to be lucky to play in college, but you're developing as a dad too, of kids. I try to instill this in my kids. It's everything else that you get out of, especially football, all sports for sure. But football, it's that family, but it's life skills. It's overcoming defeat. It's working hard. It's all of that stuff that you need. You need to be successful in sales, right? You use all of those skills, to be successful.
It's blind trust, right? You got guys going in there creating a game plan. You have to do that for your job. You had to do that tonight to get ready for tonight.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what the outcome is going to be. Most of the time you don't. You have the expectations. But it's putting together a game plan that's going to put everyone in the best possible position to be successful. And then you just hope that everyone executes. You could fill in the blanks, right? You can fill in the blanks as to what job field or what occupation that could apply to. football, in my opinion, I've seen it firsthand. We played DC Everest in 1998, and many people called that the state championship. And we had there was a right guard or left guard who was an all-state kid who went down, got hurt, was out for the rest of the year. We played DC Everest, who had an all-state linebacker, so we had a backup kid that had to come in and try to handle that kid. That was the difference in the game. When you have one guy that can't, and certainly not criticizing the young man that had a tough time with him. Most people did, because this kid was a beast. But there's a great example. If one guy can't do the job and the other 10 do, the play still doesn't work. And that is the ultimate definition of teamwork.
Yeah. It's a beautiful game when you break it down like that. It's incredible. We and Rob Salm, we had him on a week or two ago, and
he's awesome.
Yeah,
I love him.
He kind of spoke to the same thing, and really all the Psalms. I mean, again, we're going to get to what you do, but I keep sidestepping here. Speaking of a Psalm, I mean, Nick's Psalm is I think I mentioned to these, earlier, what you're in the helmet game. I mean, we're trying to make football safe. Football was and sometimes still is under attack as a violent game. And,
sure.
And no question it was, I mean, hell, we grew up in the 70s and 80s, Chuck Cecil with blood dripping down his bridge of his nose. Right. And you're not coming out of the game. You're seeing stars and you're playing hard, but that wasn't right. Research shows it. And football is evolving and changing, and you play an absolutely vital, huge part of it. It's a part of the game, the football helmet, and you're right there. You're right there in the beginning. 2008, 2009, when things really started to change, right? When we really started to understand that, hey, there's something wrong here with football. There's a lot of concussions. Something's not right here. This has got to be safe. And you and your group, Xenith football helmets, you're right there. You are inventing, just like the iPhone was inventing. You are inventing something that we understood we needed, and it had to happen.
The history, it's super interesting. And kudos to, it's ironic, man. I've been friends with Nick for a long time. We go way back. Whenever we hook up, sometimes if we get together to have an equipment conversation, his son, I've been fortunate enough to be a part of companies where safety and innovation were always a forefront. And I told myself I was always going to be a part of that. So luckily, any of the equipment that we've had to supply, and certainly Nick would buy from me for his kids. And the funny part is we'd always talk about how to be a quick drop off. And an hour later, we're like, geez, I got to get going, man. My wife's going to be mad at me. Yeah, mine too. Like, I could just blab forever.
And then an hour later, you say the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Psalms don't get enough recognition in the Valley for the positive things they have done for youth sports. They have hearts of gold, and they're very selfless. So, and I wasn't paid to say that, but I love those guys to death. And ironically, Nick was a West guy and I was an East guy. So we joked all the time about how much we hated each other. And, now we'll be having a beer together, joking about football and talking about other stuff, but they're good dudes.
What ultimately out of that, what blew me away the most was actually the helmet and how it's constructed. It's almost like shock absorbers inside inside the helmet, protecting the dome. It's absolutely fascinating and incredible. And I really don't think many people understand, like, legit what this is doing, how it's actually changing. I mean, we're nerdy guys sometimes. I mean, can you actually nerd out on the science of what that helmet is and what it's doing?
I love it. So it's interesting. The history of where we got, currently. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this. So I sold Xenith when it first came out, its inception in 2009. The president came to us. He was like a double major in the medical world, neuroscience, and played quarterback, I believe, for Harvard, one of the Ivy schools. And he was like, there's got to be a better way. He had a head injury and a bad one. And the whole idea was trying to find the problem. The problem at that time was there were minimal technological sort of advances from the early 70s into the 2000s. The only reason so polycarbonates were designed, and then internally there were suspension helmets. So the guys that we played football for, you and I, what was happening was those suspension helmets inside would fail. So the athlete's head would hit the inside of that plastic, and some guys were dying of skull fractures. So Noxay was really the only leading sort of testing company that was impact testing helmets. And they said, well, we've got to find a better way. So the idea was they said, well, what if we put like a closed cell foam, like the foam you'd have found in running shoes from the mid 80s. That's enough to absorb energy. And then they tested it. They basically tested it to what can protect against skull fractures. So there was your problem. We built technology that couldn't absorb enough energy to slow down acceleration, meaning how do we get the brain to stop from slamming into the inside of the skull, which causes bruising and causes impairment. They didn't think of that. They were only thinking about how can we stop these guys from dying from getting cracks in their heads. So football helmets, for the most part, where maybe they put in a little thicker padding, maybe that padding was made of slightly different material, a different kind of foam, but ultimately it was the same helmet from the early 70s into the 80s, into the 90s, and literally, I'm here to tell you guys, into now. There are still helmets out there with that old technology, but kids see a helmet shape on TV and they think that looks cool and that's what I want to wear. And they don't understand, and this is my fight and my passion, they don't understand what they're putting on their head is not safe.
Right.
And they're also comparing the helmet that maybe a high school can afford in their budget, which, the average team football helmet price is probably $425. The helmet that guy's wearing on TV is a 3D scanned, has 3D scanned internal parts. The foam is completely different. The materials are different. There's no air in it. And it's like a $1,900 helmet. So we fight that as well. And it frustrates me. I'm not going to name names today, but it frustrates me because there's brands out there who are okay with that and they'll sort of deny it. And there's loopholes and there's a way to get around that stuff.
You have a couple of Xenith helmets in the NFL, right?
Yes. And actually our newest helmet, we just came out with a helmet that
the Orbit,
basically
right?
through about it's called Orbit, through about 4 years of R&D and work. The NFL essentially came to us because they knew of our sort of history of innovation. We also had a test lab. We've got I believe it's the only test lab in North America where most of the battering rams are small and compact, and they're used to hit the side of the helmet, the front of the helmet top. They measure the amount of energy that the helmet can absorb. We have one that is about 25 yards long, so they can use it to test for shoulder pads, different types of impacts. They can simulate ground impacts and things like that. So the NFL's used that. We've used it. They came to us and said, we need a helmet that can test 30%, at minimum 30% better when it comes to impact absorption than the most common helmet on the field. It needs to fit better. It needs to be lighter. The problem is in the NFL, and this is where I get frustrated. I've been fortunate enough to work with engineers, technicians. I'm not just a sales guy. I'm involved in product. I was lucky enough to help design some of the features of our new helmet. I get to be involved with feedback, right? So I get to go to the Indianapolis Colts locker room and say, hey guys, try this. What do you think of it? What would you change? And I get to take that information back. So I get to see all sides of it. My frustration in our industry is it's lazy. I was lucky enough to work for Visus in 2017. And when I storytell about this industry, I talk about how Xenith was Visus before Visus, but no one really took it too serious. It was just different, right? You talked about the shock absorbers, and looks like we got a friend joining us. So there's shock absorbers. The whole idea was to create a different and better fit, because air bladders they've done research now and there's documentation on how really air bladders are unsafe. And so Xenith found a new way to fit the helmet with the adaptive fit system. And Visus kind of took that a step further. Their technology, they made a flexible shell. Instead of having the energy absorption on the inside, they put theirs on the outside, flexible shell. They call it the reflex layer. It's like fingers that kind of bend. when we were there, and then when Visus kind of went under, their new technology, their new reflex layer is more of it looks more like a waffle. But it all does the same thing. The idea is absorb the energy on the outside in, and then create a padding or a foam inside that's softer, that can conform to the athlete's head. So the cool part was, coming full circle, we lost our jobs at Visus right before COVID. And this is super ironic. A lot of my friends don't realize this. So Riddell called me, and it was 2021. It took me 7 months to find work. And they're like, hey, you've been kicking our butts for a long time with other brands. Why don't you come work for us? And first of all, I needed a job. So it was like, okay, I mean, sure. But then I had to think about, this is the company that has been the bad guy for a long time for me. And we've battled against these guys. Mm-hmm. And I thought, sure, maybe I can lend a different perspective, because a lot of those sales guys, in my opinion, are just order takers, right? Like, not to disrespect them, but I've been around some of those guys, and they can hear this and not like it. I'm not saying anything they've never heard before. A lot of those guys just kind of show up and say, okay, coach, how many do you need? And that's not how I do it. I wanted to, for me, it's a big part to understand the types of offenses that these schools run, and what kind of athletes they have, the helmets, what types of helmets they need to go on them, right? Like, there's a deep dive that should be involved when it comes to equipment. And that was missing at Riddell. And then Xenith came along, and they said, hey, we're building our team. We'd love to have you come work for us rather than just rep us. And that's what kind of brought me back. So
I love that.
Yeah. And then we've been fortunate enough to have Orbit. Orbit essentially did all those things we talked about earlier. And ended up testing. Now what you're finding companies are making position-specific helmets.
Yeah.
So Visus now has a helmet. Well, they've had it actually for a few years, where you can attach a piece to the forehead called Trench. That helmet is designed to be put on offense and defensive linemen. The stats show that Trench piece, I believe, absorbs up to like 23% more impact on the forehead area. You'll see some tight ends in the NFL wear it. The awesome part is, we came up with one helmet for all positions. Now essentially the NFLP has four testing categories. One is all around, one is QB, O-line, and D-line. We tested number 1 in O-line and D-line. We tested number 2 overall in QB. I like to call it 1A because it's really, really close. So we were 1 and 1A in QB, the QB position, and the all-purpose position. And for me, it also makes it easier to sell, because I can go to whether it's, Chris up in Green Bay for the Packers, or it's, Coach Hankins here for Xavier High School. And I can say, we have one helmet that is literally the highest rated helmet that you can put on an athlete, and it can go on all positions.
Sure.
Versus he has to figure out his budget. I got to get a few different helmets that are lineman only, and we're going to try this quarterback only helmet. That's great, but that's sort of insane to me. And again, it's a little bit, to me, you think about the engineering possibilities and how smart these guys are. To me, it seems a bit lazy too. So that was kind of the quick fix for a bunch of these other companies, is to say, well, we already have this helmet shell. We're just going to change a couple things inside of it. And now we're going to make our normal, whatever helmet that we've had, and we're going to change it to this specific position.
Right.
So that is where this is going. There's no application to high school though. High school has to have, Appleton East, Appleton North, they may have 90 helmets, 105 helmets, something like that. They can't afford to leave a helmet on the shelf. And if they don't have a helmet for a kid, we don't have enough linemen that'll wear this. Well, now they've got a helmet stuck on the shelf, and that eats into budgets. So it's going to be interesting to see where the equipment world goes when it comes to position-specific helmets.
In the NFL, how do they? Are they purchasing all the different companies? And is it ultimately the player's decision what helmet they want to wear? I mean, what is the buying process for the NFL and helmets and inventory of them?
So BioCore, that's a great question. And it directly actually affects what kids want to wear in high school. BioCore is the company that has taken on the test protocols to determine what helmet is safe, what helmet is safest, what helmet is close. They've got, if you go on their scoring and how they do it, they've got essentially most recommended, recommended, least recommended, not recommended. And that all has to do with technology. It all has to do with percentage of helmets on the field. It has to do with maybe age of technology. So I believe BioCore they created a poster. That poster was required to be hung in NFL equipment rooms, certainly for liability purposes, right? So that way guys come in and every NFL player can look and say, okay, anything in the dark green is what is recommended. If I don't wear dark green, I'm now wearing a helmet at my own risk, right? We've essentially educated the players. The irony is not all helmets are created equal. Just because it's on that poster doesn't mean it's a great helmet. It just means it's gotten by, and we'll kind of leave it at that. So players will essentially come in, and sometimes it's a trickle up effect from high school to college. So these guys that go to the Badgers or they go to Alabama, their equipment guys are going to say, "What'd you wear in high school?" Well, of course they're going to say, "I wore Riddell," because they've got 85% of the market share. And then the equipment guy's gonna say, great, well, here's what we got. These are our helmets that fall under that brand. We're going to pick one. Now that there's more technology out there, schools like Auburn and some of the bigger Power Five colleges have the money to get more expensive 3D scan helmets. So that's what guys are in. So from there, if they didn't have any issues with it, why change? Even though there may be something better and may create a less risk. So now they'll go to the NFL, and the NFL guys will say, what'd you wear in college? They'll say, this is what I wore. They'll scan them, they'll order it, they'll do whatever, and then there you go. So some guys will try new helmets. So that's the toughest part is when I worked at Visis or working for Xenith is we've got some of the best products on planet Earth, and it's hard to get guys to switch. Maybe it doesn't look exactly what they're used to, doesn't have the brand they're used to, or it's the old stigma. They just have a stigma of what Xenith used to mean 15 years ago, which, our brand has come along leaps and bounds. We've had more success with Orbit this year than we've had with anything in our past because of how light the helmet is, how comfortable it is, how it fits, the safety ratings. It's pretty awesome. I went down and watched it firsthand with the Colts, got a chance to sit in their locker room, and the equipment guy would just say, hey, John, come in here for a minute. And these gigantic human beings would walk in. I mean, I've been in football my whole life, and you still don't get used to, I'm 6'4", and I'm fitting guys, and my arms are way up here. These are gigantic humans. Some of them will see that a helmet that's not something they've been in for the last 10 years, and they'll go, that's okay. There were a few guys that we had ushered in that maybe had some head injury issues. So the equipment guys were saying, just try this. Just try it. It's going to be beneficial to you. And as soon as they got on, they're like, wow, it feels good. Wow, it looks okay. And those guys stayed in it. And then other guys see it and they're like, holy cow, I'd like to try that. So now they try it. And so the Colts were quickly a success story for us because we got secondary orders from them. And we're finding that with other teams as well. And it's super cool when you get to go up to Green Bay, being a huge Packer fan, and be able to say that they're my customer. So Packers ordered 8 helmets, and I think they're having some success with it as well. So
that's awesome.
We'll see where it goes. It's early.
When you talk about the look of the helmet, like the design, the actual look, like what goes into that? I mean, is that like a design in a car? I guess I would think.
Yeah, I mean, man. Well, look at Cybertruck, right?
Yeah.
It's just the human eye gets used to something, whether it's footwear, whether it's look at how resistant old guys like we were to higher flat build hats, right? We're like, geez, that's just, and now it's all we wear. So there's an acclimation to maybe how your eye sees things, how you see it on other people, and that's it. Brand R got lucky because they made a helmet, they made it a certain way, and the world loved it, and everyone else started to chase that look. And here's another thing that makes me think of this. There's so many patents on unnecessary things that prevent other brands from creating safer products, like quick releases, for instance. If you go across the board, each company sort of has their version of a quick release, but if you don't make the right one, if it's not made a certain way, you can get sued for it. And that's insane to me because that's all athletic trainers and equipment people want is find me a product that I can, if God forbid someone has to get boarded and they're injured and I got to get a mask off, I need a quick release.
Right.
So it's all these weird little things that if you're not 1,000% sure, Xenith Epic, our Epic helmet when it came out, was going to be the highest rated helmet in football back in 2012, I think. And because it had a slight ridge on the top, literally you wouldn't even know to look at it. But because it wasn't perfectly round, and then it had like this raised portion, it violated some IP, and we were sued for it. So if we would have sold that helmet, well, we did. They waited to let us know we were in violation, because according to the rules, once you sell the helmets, then you're notified that you're in violation. You have to give a portion of your sales from those helmets. So they get you in the background. That's the helmet Nick Chubb wore for years and years. So obviously we're going to let him wear that, and we're going to bite the bullet for any other things that occur. So that's how finicky this world is. It's interesting to me, because you'd hope that everyone can play nice in the same sandbox, because ultimately, like you said, those are some conversations I've had. Your comment about, the game of football, sport of football is under attack. It absolutely is. There's a mom's organization in California that's trying to end youth football up to a certain grade. I don't want to get into the specifics of it, because I certainly do have an opinion on it, but there's some places that don't want people playing football before 14. Football is as safe as it's ever been.
Yeah.
We tackle different. We have better equipment. We have better coaching. We have better strategies. You named Chuck Cecil, right? Like, all he wanted to do was put his forehead down and just kill somebody every single game. And we don't teach people to play football that way anymore.
No, tackle.
We want guys to get athletes to the ground, because we want the guy tackling
right
to also be safe. Back in the 80s, these athletes didn't know they were doing themselves damage by, leading with their heads. So,
right. Yeah, two go hand in hand.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, and anyway, so I digress a bit, but that's probably been my number one frustration with our industry is I wish you could get everyone in the same room and say, look, there should be some gray areas that companies can build and do some certain things. If it's like doorknobs, right? Door handles, and like, there shouldn't be IP on you just turn a latch to make sure something clicks and locks, right?
Yeah.
But in the football world, it is.
So simple, Clint. So simple.
It should be.
Hey, Newsa-Cast listeners, help us grow by subscribing wherever you get your pods, or sharing the Newsa-Cast. Follow us on Facebook, X, TikTok, or Instagram. Northeastern Wisconsin Sports Advancement is a 501c3 organization. Our mission is to raise money, provide support, and bring greater awareness for youth sports organizations in Northeast Wisconsin. We do this primarily through the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet and the Newsa-Cast. Each year, we give back to the community through 3 initiatives: the Every Kid Plays Grant, the Gives Back Initiative, and scholarships to student athletes.
So when we go back and we look at this evolution of safety, it's kind of happening in a lot of different sports, and you guys are one of the leaders in it. But why has this evolution been so quick? I mean, it's a huge J curve. It's steep. Why has it been so quick? And from a company standpoint, how fast do you have to move to keep up?
So that's a really good question, and there's some irony to it. We talked earlier about how slow it was, and almost lazy, stagnant, right? Like, they didn't. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. People weren't. I mean, we all knew helmets sucked because they were hard, and then when it got cold, they were even harder. But no one else really listened. So they just made them that way. Xenith came out in 2009 and made the most comfortable helmet, best fitting helmet, one of the highest rated helmets. There were a few flaws to the helmet. There's never going to be a perfectly engineered product until you get to go through iterations of it. And then Vices came out. And so it's funny, when I was being interviewed by Riddell, one of the first things they said is, we're hoping that you can sort of lend us some strategy with how you go in and try to upsell, because they created their own problem, which is people were stuck wanting these older products because they look cool. And Riddell's trying to figure out, how do we've got the majority of the market share, but how do we get people out of those helmets and into safer helmets? So they created their own problem with sort of that slow moving technology. And then some of it came from Xenith and Visus creating better products where athletes were putting them on saying, when I hit someone, I don't feel it anymore. I don't see stars. I don't get headaches. I hear it from my son, right? He's the perfect sort of test dummy for me because he gets to wear, luckily, all the best stuff. And Friday nights, he was a safety and he smashed into some guys and he got smashed into. And as a dad, you hold your breath. I would just know on Friday nights, if he got hurt, at least it was in the best that he could be wearing. And we got lucky. He never got hurt. So all this great technology, and now everyone's trying to play catch up. So it went from 30 years of not much to literally now the last 6 to 7 years of a lot. Because now everyone's trying to come out with the best. And it's a good problem. It's definitely a good problem to have.
Is it going to continue to evolve? I mean, do you think the technology, there's room for growth in the technology?
Absolutely. Helmets have to get lighter. I haven't seen the studies on this. I know there's a sweet spot. I just know it. So we know that probably the average helmet weight painted that athletes are wearing is somewhere around 4.6 to 4.8 pounds. And unfortunately for a while, the higher performing helmets, except for Xenith, were always really heavy. For them to put the type of stuff in it to make them safe or safer, the helmet was heavy, and that causes problems too, right? There's the whiplash effect. There's a brand out there called Light, and their whole thing is their technology is all based on, we want a light helmet. They're going from the direction of neck muscles and shoulder muscles, and there's that whole sort of category of and certainly a group of people that are like, that's where it starts and that's where safety starts. I've been doing this a really, really long time. I've been lucky enough to be in test labs, talk to engineers. I think there's a sweet spot. I think you can make a helmet that's too light. It doesn't have enough mass to control movement during collisions, right? I always think of vehicles. If you could take a vehicle that, Visus use this as their selling point, which is, it deforms on the outside, it crumples on the outside. So think of crumple zones in vehicles along with protecting the athlete or the driver on the inside of the car versus the cars that you guys drove and I drove, these big boats where, you smash something, you weren't going far, but if you were in the car, you only had a seatbelt on, you're going to bang into something. And we remember those days. I feel like there's a sweet spot. I think you can make a helmet that's too light. You can make a helmet that's too heavy. I think you need the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, I think it's just going to take time and testing and more data to see who gets injured, what they're wearing, how hard was the collision, where did that impact occur to figure out what that is.
The Newsa-Cast listeners know I was a long time official. This is actually my first year not officiating football. And as in the umpire position, I saw a lot of times, say the quarterback will fall, get his legs tangled and hit the back of his head.
Correct.
I don't know. Is that what is, do you have data on where are they sustaining? Actually. Yeah, I figured that.
I love these conversations. So what BioCore does, it's super, super interesting. They put ID tags inside jerseys, shoulder pads, helmets, and they have, I don't know the number, but there's many cameras that they own inside every NFL stadium. And anytime someone gets injured, not just head injury, could be shoulder separations, they track it. So they'll track, since we're talking helmets, if someone leaves the field because of a head injury, they track where was that athlete's helmet struck? Was it the upper side? Was it the front? Was it the back? And what hit it? Did he hit the ground? Did he hit a knee, a shoulder? Did he hit the crown of another helmet? So they deep dive into all of that stuff. So the number one overall impacted part of a helmet, especially in college and in the NFL, is the upper side. It's like 43 or 44 point something percent of all head injuries occur on the upper sides. When it came to the quarterback position in the NFL, the majority of the injuries were in the back.
Sure.
And then the forehead and the face mask kind of came in second overall, and then third with third with quarterbacks.
Do you ever feel, there's so much talk, obviously, especially the former NFL players, the repercussions of just the style of football years ago. I mean, some of this is just technology is getting better, right? I mean, it sucks for those guys. I'm sorry that the game was played that way. I guess on some level they took a risk. I mean, do you on some level, I'm sure you feel bad for them, but I mean, is it just accepting, right, that football's is advancing, or what's your take on that? I'm not even sure if that's a question, but
no, it's like the VCR, right? Now we're watching digital things on TV. I feel bad for my mom, but she got suckered in to buy the beta, and then ended up VHS was the way to go. I mean, look, we didn't really have social media, and people weren't tracking technology back in the day when they went from leather to plastic and suspension, right? So those players are long gone. So there's no way to even necessarily test their brains to find out. For me, it'd be super interesting. They had to have tackled differently because they were literally just wearing padded leather with no face mask. Right. You're not going to lead with your head much, I wouldn't think. So
that's nuts, though, to think about it, isn't it? Football play with freaking leather helmets.
If CTT was an issue with guys who played football back then. And to be honest with you, again, it goes back to, these organizations trying to end football. I just don't care what anyone says. And I would say this if I was a teacher or working somewhere else. Now that I know what I know, better equipment absolutely matters. When people are like, yeah, we still have to worry about CTE. That whole core group of athletes from the late 70s and into the 80s, Junior Seau, right? These are all guys that retired in the early 90s. It was a different game. Their helmets were just good enough. Tackling, you just wanted to get a guy to the ground. And to be honest with you, they won't say it publicly, but the intent was to also hurt guys.
Right.
You're telling me if you couldn't, Chuck Cecil couldn't
stick the helmet in the rib?
Yeah, or helmet to helmet. It wasn't illegal back then, right? Chuck Cecil's crowned a helmet trying to hit LaDainian Tomlinson. He was trying to take him out because that was the best running back in football.
I can still picture like Walter Payton diving over the middle and George Cumby or somebody from the Packers. They'd meet helmet to helmet right at the top of the line of scrimmage.
Yep. And so it's funny. So when I see social media and I see, it's always men, of course, talking about how flag football and the game is soft. These people don't understand if they hadn't changed the rules, and if they hadn't gone to the extremes and the measures that we've gone through, football wouldn't be around.
Right.
They don't get it. People were dying because their brains, right? I mean, the atrophy of a brain, their brain was dying because of the way they played a sport. I mean, we're smart guys here. We can't allow someone to continue to play a sport if there's a chance to kill you. Yes, everyone understands the risk, but if we can minimize the risk with better equipment, better technique, the game is still fun. It's still the greatest game, and it's still fun to watch, and there's still big collisions. Yeah. And it's a $10,000 fine and a 15-yard penalty. There's still big hits. We just don't have to worry now. And no offense, think of those days. We could have a whole nother podcast on NFL playoffs where some of our best players or favorite players or fantasy football guys were knocked out, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't play. So football is not better when the superstars or the better players aren't playing because they were taken out by, head injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. Just appreciate the athletic abilities. Guys are just absolutely amazing what they do with their body.
Your technology in football helmet, do you see that moving into other sports as well? Like hockey,
lacrosse.
Hockey's a big one, and my kids play. It's still, there's not a lot of evolution in the hockey helmets.
So when I was at Vices, we were working on stuff for the NHL. The problem in the NHL was the same thing. Those helmets are so lightweight.
Yeah.
They didn't like the fact. Here's the funny thing. They always talk about Steve Tasker. Remember when he wore that like covering over the top?
Yep.
So when helmets started to get bigger, they're like, oh, that's the stupid Tasker helmet. And it's like, guys, you can't, if you're going to put more stuff into something, you're going to have to create more space. So it's going to have to get bigger until we figure out a way, with technology to be able to make it smaller again and still do the same job. And we're not quite there yet. we're close. Our orbit helmet is really close because it's a really lightweight smart foam that flexes. So when you hit it hard, it stiffens up. But on softer blows, it's super malleable and it's squishy like it's squishy like memory foam, and that is why the NFL guys love it so much right now. But the short answer to the hockey part is they're very resistant to helmet shapes changing, sizes changing, and the weight. It's the same issue that the NFL went through. So I know that there's companies out there toying with it. I certainly hope we do. The problem is it's going to take a long time to get in that market. Right. Same thing with lacrosse. Lacrosse is another sport that really should focus on that as well.
Best helmets in the game. Style.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the funniest thing. I went in with a helmet when I was working for a company and showed it to a guy. It was an insane helmet. Safe, light, thought it looked sweet. He saw it. He goes, it's really stupid. Can't stand it. I knew what he meant. I swapped out the face mask, put a different face mask in. He came back and he goes, wait a minute, what's that one? I didn't see that one before. It was the same dang helmet.
Yeah.
So, there's just another example. It's a fashion show. These guys go to the mirror first. It's the first thing that they do. Yeah. And rightfully so, right? There's cameras on them and it's more than just playing football for a lot of these guys. So I understand it.
Yeah. It's like you're Darth Vader or something, man. It looks sick, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's pretty funny. It's true. Very true.
Some of the technology that you're putting into these helmets, you're now expanding out into like shoulder pads and different other types of safety equipment for the game. How are you working with that and making it for a different part of the body as well?
We've always had a lightweight shoulder pad. It's sold well. We were working on an iteration that was eventually, I think, going to be targeted to the higher levels, NFL, college football, and that stopped. We kind of went through some new ownership and did some different things, and they were cutting some of the things we were working on. So our current high school shoulder pad is awesome. It's super popular. UW Oshkosh actually just bought a bunch of them and they love them. As you start getting into the higher levels of football, it's like everything else. It's getting smaller. It's getting lighter. I wish I had one here. I don't have one. I told my son when he had graduated, if he played college football, I would surprise him with essentially it's an NFL branded shoulder pad. And you look at the thing and it's super small and it's custom made to his colors. He's going to lacrosse and it's pretty awesome, but it's like, holy cow. Some of those NFL shoulder pads are getting dangerously small, to be honest with you. So it's funny you asked that too, because BioCore just came out with I don't know if you want to call it a policy, but they're starting to impact test shoulder pads to make sure that the design protocol falls along, right? You've got to protect an AC joint. You've got to protect certain parts of the back. And so I think if I had to predict it, I think you're going to start seeing shoulder pads get a little bit bigger again, because some of them just they're not protecting. You guys would love it. I wish I could work out a way to get you guys to come with me on one of my sales calls, because you get to just hang out with these equipment guys and talk sports, equipment, and went to the Colts. We talked about Peyton Manning for forever. It was awesome. And one of the beefs in the NFL is they get to pick. I mean, equipment guy can't say no as long as it's certified. And some of these pads they're picking is so small, but the players can't figure out why they sustain a shoulder injury. It's, in their mind, they're playing the same way they've always played, but they don't realize it's not the same pad they were wearing. So hopefully there's some regulation with that as well. The tough part is a lot of it is also collectively bargained, which is insane to say because you're an athlete and it's your job, right? So you would think that you would want to be as safe as possible. And these guys literally will still wear the bare minimum knowing the next hit could end their career, and it doesn't bother them. It's crazy.
Is that just about the look? I mean, or like they don't wear, literally they wear shoulder pads and helmets, I feel, right? I mean, there's basically no knee pads, thigh pads. It's sort of stitched into their underwear, it seems like. But
there are thigh pads and knee pads. No one polices it. A lot of these guys, the trend now has gone where they wear their pant above their knee.
Yeah, exposed the knee.
Yeah, and as an ex-official,
It was the worst job ever to try.
You got to stop. You got to say, "Hold on, play can't start." You got to put your mouth guard in.
Right.
Your buckle is undone. You've got to pull your pants down, cover your knee. Coach, this guy doesn't have a tail pad in, right? Like, and the kids will look at you like you're crazy, and it's like, dude, those are there to protect you. Do you want a broken tailbone? Right. And I don't know. I've gotten Charlie horses before, and those are awful. So some of these guys, it's the plate that the NFL guys wear, their thigh boards are literally as thick as a piece of cardboard, and it's just a piece of polycarbonate that they put in there. There's no padding underneath it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's nuts.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose rugby players though have always gone no pads. Why not? Right.
Yeah. There's still some under padding guys can wear. It's funny. I try to get my kid to wear some of this stuff because I know it's out there. He's like, Dad, it's just not cool. And I'm like, for crying out loud, Tyler. So I even had to fight with him. But after a while, it's like, I don't want him worrying about me being mad at him because he's not wearing certain undergarments when, he had a pretty good high school career. So I left him alone. He didn't get hurt. When he got hurt, like I felt like, it's dad, right? That I told you so is coming, and it never came.
Yeah.
So,
hey, I wanted to ask, when you guys are developing that bubble foam, like how is there a company that's specifically making that for you? Like that's you contract out for that, or how are you developing?
Yeah.
That?
So there's companies out there like, and it's publicly known, so I'm not necessarily giving away any information that nobody knows, but there's companies out there that are experts in 3D printing. So a lot of those lattices that are like inside our helmet, forehead and rear, is a 3D printed lattice, which is lightweight, can compress and flex. And then, you've got companies like BASF and other brands out there that are making different versions of foam. Maybe, I don't want to get too technical here, but, the foams that are going into running shoes, they're lightweight, they rebound well. The issue with foams in the 70s and 80s where they'd compress, and eventually those cells would get tighter and tighter and tighter. So now there's no more compression, right? There's no more rebound, I should say. So the idea is now that the technology and the foams that are going into helmets have rebound. The concern is trying to make them lightweight. And then a lot of times it's just a mixture. It's an additive of another product that expands the foam, or maybe it's blowing in more air molecules into it to expand the foam. There's a bunch of different ways. To me, there's another company out there that uses like filaments. So the filaments are lightweight. They have a flex, they're columnary. So they, in columns, they buckle a certain way. And that technology allows them to be super lightweight. It's all, how do I say this? These are all products that are used for other industries. That's what I wanted to say. That the football world finally wise up to be like, oh, you're putting that in that product. What if we found a way to shape that round and put that in a helmet? Yeah. So it's kind of like that.
It's amazing what you've seen in your career here, with just the technology and I mean, obviously everything, our phones, everything, it just, technology is just flying, but man, in the football helmet world, that's nuts too.
I think one of the coolest meetings I was in is we were in Seattle with Visus, and Per Reinhold is the director of advanced research for Boeing. So literally the guy's job is to make rocket ships and airplanes and, make crumple zones and do the things. So he was the guy that came up with the technology of our helmet. And one of our guys in leadership had said, so where are we with this? And he, because of his being in this industry, or being in his industry with planes and rockets and stuff like that, aerospace, he was like, I give it about 4 years, 4.5 to 5 years. Someone's going to see what we did, figure it out, and copy it. And literally, sure enough, it was like 4 years later, and someone else came out with something similar. So, but that makes sense, right? Like it's this engineer, this company said, we're going to put that in our product. Someone else said, we've got a relationship in China or somewhere else who could do that lighter and better. Let's use that. And
sure.
So now, like you guys were saying, how quickly, that's why things are moving so quickly, because someone said, we're going to put 3D lattice in a helmet because it's going to be lightweight. It's going to conform to an athlete's head. It's going to absorb energy. And someone else is going to say, we can find a company that does that, but maybe a little better.
It's so interesting how that works, and just
it's crazy. Well, and helmet shells, really, to be honest with you, if you're still making stuff out of polycarbonate plastic, you're crazy because it's not durable. Everything now is leaning. None of our helmets are polycarbonates either, so they're all a form of nylon, which is durable and lightweight, allows the shell to flex on impact, which helps for energy absorption. And to me, that's where you're going to see things go. Is you're going to see materials change because they're more durable, they're lighter, and they're going to be able to absorb more energy.
kind of like what Tosh was asking before. I mean, so you eventually just see this, expanding bike helmets, all sports helmets. I mean, this technology eventually will get cheap enough, good enough that it can just be incorporated into everyday life.
It's funny you say bike helmets, because if you look, so if you guys, when you get a chance after we're done here, go to just Google Virginia Tech helmet ratings. They cover every helmet. They cover bike helmets. They cover riding helmets. They're sort of viewed as the official ranking, if you will, for high school and youth helmets. And yeah, I mean, when you look at bike helmets, initially a bike helmet was just designed to take one crash, right? Yeah. It would crack, it would break around your head, but it would save your head. And I believe bike helmets are slowly trying to move towards having things where if you get in an accident with a bike helmet, those materials can rebound and not be damaged to the point where you can't wear the helmet again, which is essentially a football helmet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about the technology going into the high-end helmets, and the problem with youth in high school is cost, is budget. How does that technology work its way down and become cost-effective for the youth in the high school programs to still keep, that safety in mind?
That's the tough part. It's sort of a two-part question too. When you talk about youth football, the youth brain is not developed yet. When you get to the age of 12, we did a study on this, and actually I believe that the human skull is surprisingly like 92%. It's what its size is going to be by the time someone is 12 or 13. The problem is the neck muscles are still underdeveloped. The brain is underdeveloped. The fluids and the different things in the brain that help cushion the brain are underdeveloped. So for a long, long time, most helmet brands, except for Xenith and Visis, all they did was took their adult helmet technology, made a smaller version of it, and put it on a kid. Well, that's not what's best for a young athlete. Xenith had a helmet that was lightweight. One of the reasons we're one of the most popular helmets in the youth market is the hardest thing to do is fit a kid, right? Right. Kids aren't strong enough to get their helmet on themselves. When they do, they fight it. They can't always buckle it on. So we created a fit system where it was easy. They could just pull the straps. They could snap it on. They got the best fit, but it was also lightweight. And there's where the weight issue is probably the most prevalent, is in youth football. You can't have a heavy helmet. And there's still a lot of real heavy youth helmets out there, either because of price, because the coach or maybe the president of the league said, we know that there's other stuff out there, but I have to buy 300 helmets and I don't have the money. In the high school world, we have a plan moving forward. We're trying to create a helmet. Our helmet is called Orbit Pro. Comes with titanium face mask, so it's lightweight. Quick releases on it, all the bells and whistles that you would expect in a Division I, in a college, in an NFL helmet. The idea is to try to find something that can take some of that price out without sacrificing the materials that are making it so lightweight and so safe, and also making it fit the best. Everyone is going through that. You'll find Riddell struggling with that because they're trying to take their Axiom helmet, which is their future of football. It's a 3D scan helmet. Coaches, for the most part, don't want to deal with that. And to the technology, and it actually isn't hard to do. It's a good helmet. They download an app on their cell phone. They're given a sock to put over the athlete's head, a spandex cap. They 3D scan the head. They enter it, measures the size. Once it's correct, they do all the they figure out if there's any errors, and then they send it off to Riddell. Riddell builds the padding. They send it off. It's got Tosh and his number in it. Here's your helmet, and it fits you perfectly. I know coaches are going to listen to this, and I hope they don't take it personally, but coaches are, I don't want to use the word lazy. They have a lot to do.
Yes, they do.
And something I've always prided myself in with selling is I've always said, let me take care of the equipment piece for you. Your job is to coach. My job is to make sure we're putting the best stuff on your athletes. If you have fitting questions, let me know. I'll drive up. Coach Bryson and I go way, way back up in West Superior. I'm in a moment's notice. I'll meet him for lunch or whatever, just to make sure that his situation is perfect. But the thing that coaches don't do a great job on is the follow-up of fitting. So that's where the lazy piece comes in. I joke. It's like, man, you guys to the detail, your practice plans are to the minute. And, you know, they've got timers down in their locker rooms that tell you to the second when kickoff is, right? All this stuff. But yet I'll go to high schools and I'll check in on a buddy and go say hi to them and say, let me see your helmets. And they're all misfit. Not all of them, but it's like, so it's also finding a way to be able to provide a product that checks those boxes for those guys.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't matter how great a helmet is if it's not fit properly.
Right.
Are you happy with the state of youth football, kind of where it's at, or is there? I mean, obviously there's room for improvement.
I am. I'll tell you, it's youth football right now is really only as good as its leadership. That's why I praise Nick Solomon. We've coffee and drinks. We've talked youth sports for a long time, and he has put his flag in the sand, and he has said, we're going to buy the best stuff for our guys because we want this sport to be safe. Unbiased, right? He's an Appleton North guy,
right?
And he'd be the first guy that would be concerned if an Appleton East athlete was hurt, or if an Appleton East or a Hortonville parent was upset with something. Like, that's how much he loves the game of football. And I share his passion from my direction. I have a younger son now through a new marriage 3 years ago that's now going through AOAFA again. So Tyler, obviously I've got one leaving and he's going to college, and I've got one coming through it. And I'm obviously, the dad ears are up, making sure that things are being said correctly, technique is being coached correctly. I'm always peeking in, checking helmets. Yeah, I'm blessed that everyone's wearing a Xenith helmet in the program that he is in. And the awesome part is they're not even my customers anymore, because my job now is kind of elevated upward, and I'm dealing with, more adult and NFL and stuff like that. But I mean, I feel like it's just my lot in life to stay in the industry and help as many people as I can. So when our youth guys will have a fitting, if they need me over there to help fit guys or whatever, I'll do it. But I think that as long as the presidents and the trickle down and the coaches and their coaching technique, and they understand equipment matters, because some of these guys don't want to deal with that either. I've been in those conversations where, like, that's not my job. I came here to coach football. They need to understand that they're also equipment managers. And I always used to say to them, like, that's great, but what if your best running back gets hurt because you didn't fit his helmet right? Well, now you're an equipment manager and you're an athletic trainer. So but I firmly believe the sport is, like I said, it's never been as safe as it is.
That's kind of what we were after in talking to you, to bring awareness, because like we said, it was under attack, and football is doing great things. They're taking safety serious, and in the next episodes we're going to be talking to Jeff Chambers about the Cato collar, which is
he's awesome.
Another safety feature that there's people and teams and research really, really working hard to make this sport, and like we talked about, the trickle down, to make these sports safer, because man, sports still rules, right? I mean, we're nothing without sports, right? It taught us almost everything.
Well, look at, I mean, I've been involved in job interviews, and I've heard of other people involved in job interviews. They've asked, you played for a team setting?
Yeah.
If so, what level? And if so, what did you play? What position did you play? Were you a captain? Again, it goes back to guys like Pat and Dick, right? Like teaching us how to be great leaders, and what to worry about. My biggest takeaway with Pat was, he said something that was almost prophetic, like something about, I think it was along the lines of like the weakest player and making sure that they don't fall behind, and learning how to teach and coach that type of athlete, right? Like, and so it's those things that really, it was awesome to, how do I say it? It was awesome to stand on the sidelines on a Friday night when I was 21 and 22.
Yeah.
It felt pretty dang cool. And by the time I was 28, 29, 30, 31, it was like, holy smokes. By the time I got to the 15th season coaching, it was about the kids. And it was about what's the impact I'm going to leave on these guys, and am I going to challenge them to try to be better? And that's just all from the top, right?
Yeah, the older you get, you really to appreciate that's pretty cool to hear. Just dawned on me, I don't think you realize Tosh is a teacher at Appleton East. He's been there for a number of years, and that's kind of cool.
Okay.
It made me think, you being an East grad, you and Ernie Gonzalez, I mean, that school's still standing, right? How did that happen?
Yeah, Ernie's got more stories than I do. I'll just leave it at that. But there's another. You're not going to find his name in many newspaper clippings, but anyone who played sports with that guy, man, you could talk forever. Man, those are the days. How do we get back to that? You guys figure that out yet?
All we have left are memories.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Clint, this was awesome. Really, I was looking forward to this.
Thank you.
A little over an hour. I'm sure we could go another hour more, but
man,
this is we'll have you back on, and really more than anything, thank you for just bringing awareness to making football safer.
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking of me, man.
All right, Tosh, it is time for what started this whole podcast off, the Red Smith Banquet Throwback. We go back to 1994. And actually, I remember this. I was in my 20s. I definitely remember when we had Bob Harlan, Packer president, and put a little context to 1994. The Packers hadn't won a Super Bowl yet, but they were ramping up. I mean, you had Brett Favre. I believe you had Reggie White right during that time, and they just couldn't quite beat the Cowboys. But within the next 2 years, they were in the Super Bowl. So this was an exciting time. You could feel it, and Bob Harlan came to a lot of Red Smith banquets, and 1994 was the year that we decided, we needed to honor him with the Red Smith Award. So this is a good one, Tosh, and like always, we play a part of it here on the podcast. But you can get the full version every Sunday night, or every Sunday morning, I should say. Grab your cup of coffee, and you can get right on YouTube, Newsa-Cast YouTube, the Red Smith Banquet Throwback, and there you get the full video version of not only Bob Harlan, but gosh, Tosh, we've got to have 40 plus, almost 50 throwbacks up already in our library.
Yep.
Folks, enjoy 1994 at the Red Smith Sports Award Banquet at the Radisson Paper Valley Hotel, when Bob Harlan, president of the Green Bay Packers, received the Red Smith Award at the Red Smith Banquet.
Red Smith Sports Awards Banquet Throwback.
The Red Smith Award, of course, goes to someone who has made some unique contributions to sport in Wisconsin, and also epitomizes the great values that Red Smith exhibited.
Let's give a Red Smith welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 1994 Miller Night Sky Award winner, Mr. Bob Harlan.
Thank you very much. You're obviously not the same fans who send me those anonymous letters written in crayon after we lose to the Bears. and I appreciate it. I'm really very honored to be here tonight. I'm very honored to receive this award, and doubly honored to join the elite people who have received it prior to me. It's a fine group of gentlemen who have represented sports in a number of ways for a number of years, and for me to be a part of that group means a great deal to me. But the important thing tonight for me is to say thank you. Thank you to Miller for the award. Thank you to Danny for putting on a dinner such as this. And thank you to the fans of the Green Bay Packers. The best, the most loyal, the most patient, the most deserving. There's no sports fans anywhere who deserve football, quality football, like you people do. And we're going to continue to make every attempt in Green Bay to have as fine a team in the National Football League as we can possibly have every single year. And finally, I would like to say a very sincere thank you to the Green Bay Packers for giving me the opportunity 23 years ago to come here and work for what, in my mind, is the very finest organization in all of sports. There's not another story like this anyplace. It's more fiction than it is real. The small city, the community ownership, the 11 championships, 18 members in the Canton Sports Hall of Fame. It's a wonderful story that'll never happen again. People love to talk about tradition in sports. It's the main item. If you're in baseball, they like to talk about the Yankees, or if you're in basketball, they want to talk about the Celtics. But believe me, the very finest tradition in all of sports lives at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I am delighted to be a part of it. Thank you.
Tosh, it's always fun to relive those memories back in the 90s. You and I were young pups back then, but the Packers were making a charge for the first time in our lifetime. We were at the filling station enjoying some of those epic runs during that time. But Bob Harlan, great throwback. Remember, folks, you can get that every Sunday on the Newsa-Cast full video. It's pretty cool. Relive 1994, 1995. Think about that run. It's awesome. But Tosh, with that, as we close out the show, we got to end the way we always do, right? With a little "It's Forgotten," and I'm never forgetting. So, how about you, Tosh? What's forgotten in your world?
Well, I think we're coming out of June, and I think the thing that a lot of people want to forget is the weather in June and all the rain that has happened. So,
God,
I mean, I know we've had a lot, and I know farmers are, hanging in balance. I think a couple dry weeks here would do wonders for them. But, we had some flooding issues. We've had some dams breach. We've had a lot of rain in June. So I think we can forget about that. We can pass it along and move over, and hopefully we have a dry July.
I hope so, Tosh. As a letter carrier, it's been brutal. But that day that we had that morning midday rain, I've seen it a couple times, but I mean, everybody's seen the video. The flooding was just insane. It was down in the flats. It was coming down from Prospect Street onto Water Street. It was literally, you could have white-watered rafted down that. It was just unbelievable, and it's just nuts. I mean, I got to ask you, so as a family of farmers, how are the fields? I mean, some of them look like they're completely underwater. Does that completely wreck the crop, or can they come back?
So from what Melissa's dad has told me, that corn can actually sit and grow in water for a period of time. I don't know, like a week or so. So the corn will probably be okay. It's the soybeans that really get hammered by it. And yeah, he really didn't say much about his fields. He's got some fields that are pretty low, so I assume that those are not doing very well. Yeah. But I also do not remember what he planted and where it's planted. So, yeah, it kind of depends on the crop. It depends on what it is. So,
Yeah, boy. Oh, Mother Nature wins every time, doesn't she?
Yeah, it does for sure. So, Joe, what are you forgetting?
Well, Tosh, what's forgotten and probably thankfully so is it's old school football. We've had a great football episode. We talked helmets. But remember in 1994, this is maybe even a little bit before, he played before this, but, Chuck Cecil, right? Bloody bridge, use the head. You're seeing stars, that tough guy mentality. You're not taking me out of the game. And that's all changed. Football is different. It's the evolution of football. And our old school football has changed. It's been a while in the making. The rules are took the head out of the game. They're teaching how to tackle different. But definitely that, what we consider old school football is no longer. And I think, hey, let's embrace the new game. Some of there's still these guys and girls, they're as athletic as you ever see. They're just incredible to see. And they deserve a good life too, right? I don't need them to see all beat up and broken. Earl Campbell, he can't even walk. And I remember, you couldn't stop that guy, but old school football is no longer, Tosh. And thankfully, so we're forgetting that.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely.
What's something we never want to forget? What are you never forgetting?
Well, I'm still, I know this is a football episode, but I'm still a baseball guy down at heart, and just not forgetting the Brewers. The Brewers are having fun to watch. They're unpredictable, but they're playing hard. They're always in every game, and they've had a nice run in June. Took a few on the head here in Dodger land, but they've been in every single game. And I know we have a nice series coming up, and we have the All-Star game coming up in a couple weeks here, in about a week, I should say. And just never forgetting Brewers. Something about the Brewers in summer that brings me back, and even if they're playing terrible, I'll still watch them or listen to them or whatever it is.
It's comforting, Tosh. I mean, I know what you're saying. I kind of fell away from that. I should revisit that. But you're right. Even if you're sitting on the back porch with the radio going, it just feels good. It's summer. It's really the only thing we know, right? And it's still baseball. It's a great game. I mean, we love football. We love football a lot, but baseball is still, it was America's game at one time.
It was, absolutely. So, Joe, what you never want to forget?
Well, Tosh, you and I were talking before we hit record, and I have to share this story because it literally blows me away. You and I think we're celebrating. I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but I think we're celebrating about a year that we've done this. This might be our 52nd episode. I'm not sure. And you and I, we don't know what we're doing. We joke about it, but we really don't. I feel like we don't really know what we're doing, but we kind of know what we're doing. But we never ever get any kind of feedback from anybody. And like I said in the open, I caught an Amelia Forage show, and I was with a really good friend that told me the story about Holland. He is, Tosh, a loyal listener of the show. It blew me away because I remember I'm not quick to remember things, and it took a little bit of regenerating of the brain, but I do remember the night that I first met Holland at Light the Night down on College Avenue, and I remember him being told, hey, check out the Newsa-Cast, and he actually did that. He likes all the episode. He actually likes what we're doing, so shout out to Holland. And then to make the weekend even better, is doing a little prep work this afternoon to get ready for the show. Out of the blue, I get a text from another loyal listener of the show. Tosh had no idea about this, but reconnected with an old friend. My older son Cooper and his boy were tight in the soccer world. We did a lot of traveling, stayed in a lot of crappy hotels together, and loved every minute of it. But John reached out and said, hey, I like what you're doing. So it made me really feel good, and I'm certainly never forgetting that, Tosh. It's just sometimes it's hard with growth. It's you're just not sure if we're really doing the right thing. But to hear that, it's much appreciated, and thank you guys. That made me feel really, really good, and the whole Newsa-Cast team is excited about that, so I had to share that story, Tosh.
All right. Well, that's a good story, for sure.
Learning to be a storyteller. Well, Tosh, we got another one in the books. What we think is maybe the year episode. Who knows? We can ride that content for a little bit. But thank you, folks. Thank you, Holland. Thank you, John, especially. And then all of the loyal Newsa-Cast listeners. We will Yeah, catch you next Thursday, right, Tosh? We're going to keep the safety and football theme going, so we're going to take a look at the Cato collar next week.
All right. Thank you for listening to another great episode of the Newsa-Cast. We'd really appreciate it if you hit up our social pages, subscribe, like, follow, and don't be afraid to engage. Head over to our YouTube channel to get exclusive content like the full interviews and speeches from the past Red Smith banquets.
A huge thank you to Digstown for all the music in today's episode. Catch a gig or find them on Spotify.